I think I got most of y'all here. I'm going to pull up some slides to have as a reference point, but it really is going to be very heavy in just talking, not looking at slides. So let me get that pulled up and share. And we are beginning now, not soon. Let me get everything situated where I get to see it like I want again. Okay. So welcome. We're here together with a lot of folks that are going to be talking about ACT Peer Specialists. This had a more formal name, but I quickly put this together and called it the Two Jacobs, Ashley and Pam. Let's talk ACT Peers. And we are going to do our best to try to protect some time for open mic. But if this ends up digging in and we have a lot to talk about, we'll go ahead and just keep using the time that makes most sense for us. Now, a reminder, which Peyton, if you could help drop some of these things in. We have a lot of great resources out there, particularly the Spirit Center has a lot. So we want to repoint you to where you can find information that are recordings from previous meetings that we've had, which live on this page. So you have to go into the folders, but if you go into the National ACT Consultant Call presentations, you're going to get a catalog of most, not all, of our previous meetings. And then you also see that we previously had hosted a psychiatric care provider series that I think has 4 different sessions in there, and then an ACT team leader series too. So reminder to all the resources we have out there. And also, we thought it got removed, but this 2-hour ACT primer that's free to you all, and it's recorded and you go at your own pace, still lives out there on this healthyknowledge.org. You sign up for free on Healthy Knowledge. Once you're in the platform, you search assertive community treatment, and you're going to find that intro. So some teams we hear now use it as an onboarding process, which we think is cool. There's 3 modules. One module, the first one is about 20 minutes. We talk about the history of how ACT came to be and the context in which it came to be. Module 2 is probably the meatiest one, where you get into about an hour-long overview of core elements of ACT. And we have 3 vignettes that we use to kind of talk about kind of how this applies in actual work. And then module 3 is about 40 minutes, and that is going through research and the value of fidelity evaluations. So check that out. And y'all are muted because 200 of us would be really disrupted if we weren't. And your video's off for same reasons, but it's being recorded. We'll have this in that folder too. We don't have much for slides, so it's really this conversation. And also, if you have questions, put it in the Q&A chat. So use the chat for things that you don't necessarily need a response from us. But if you want a response from us, put it in the Q&A, and we'll be monitoring that, either giving you responses in written form, or sometimes we may do it out loud so everybody can benefit from the question you asked. And with that said, a little bit of introductions here. Oh, also, we can hear from you too. So if you want to come on the mic, raise your hand. We'll double check that you intended to say, I want to be called on and talk versus hi. And then we'll bring you on to join in and live talk to us. And introductions. So as you can see, I am missing my other half right now. So there may be some tech difficulties because Maria was joining remotely from out of her own state. So in the meantime, you're going to hear from me as the facilitator. So I'm Lorna Moser. I am the director of the Institute for Best Practices here at UNC. And we are a training technical assistance center that's here in support of ACT teams across our state, but also work in support with many other states as well. So we interact a lot with ACT teams, but also with other mental health authorities that are overseeing and supporting their teams. You may know me and Maria because we're both the co-authors of the Team Act, which is a fidelity tool used in many of our states. And also we always joke because she usually goes first and then I just say ditto. So I'm not used to having to say all this myself. We're both licensed clinical psychologists and just like, and both do mental health services research. You probably have heard of us talk many times about that national ACT study. The manuscripts are underway right now. We're not joking. We're finally have them several written, not all of them, and they're going to be getting ready to submit. So we are working to get all those findings out. And then Maria also is a director of her own, co-director of her own training technical assistance center called the Spirit Center. Yeah, and thankfully our respective school colors complement each other nicely, I think. Carolina blue with the purple. So I'm going to ask that our folks that are joining us are going to do some introductions. So I'm going to start with my Jacob because we have two Jacobs here. Both are with their respective institutes or centers. And we were joking before y'all joined. They both happen to have glasses, beard, white guys. I mean, we just kind of cloned some Jacob peers out there. But go ahead, Jake and Schoenberg. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Lorna. So I'm Jacob Schoenberg. I am the peer consultant and trainer with the Institute for Best Practices. I've been working with ACT teams for a long time. I spent 14 years providing peer services on a couple of high fidelity teams here in North Carolina. I've also been in school for many, many years, and I'm finally done with that. So I'm grateful for that, and I really enjoy this work, and I'm glad to be here to share with y'all.
All right. We'll say not the other Jacob, just Spirit Jacob.
I I go by Jacob number two. That's what I've been calling. I think Jacob number one here is pretty outstanding. My name is Jacob Hackman. I'm a peer support specialist trainer with the Spirit Center at UW. I've been in this position for almost a year. Prior to that, I was peer support for about 7 years on an ACT team in Idaho. And then ACT services kind of changed in Idaho. They shifted from uh, health and welfare delivered to private practice. And so I got to help our Center of Excellence stand up six ACT teams across the state. And so I am extremely passionate about recovery in general, but specifically about PACT because I've seen the benefits that it does for our folks in our community. And so I'm really, really excited to be here today to shed some light on peer supports and how they can support our folks and our teams, and really the importance of protecting that role. And I'm more excited to hear from Ashley and Pam because they're out there in the trenches. They're doing the work.
All right. Good plug. So, Ashley, how about you're up next?
Yeah, so my name is Ashley Kern Bishop. I am over here in Yakima, Washington. I work at Comprehensive Healthcare on the PAC team over here. I am proud to say that recently, with our fidelity review, our PAC team received the highest score in the state of Washington. Yes, a team effort. I'm very, very proud, very blessed to be on this team. Also, I am a RAP facilitator too. When I was initially going through the RAP plan in the first place and reading in the book, it talked about RAP groups in your area, and I looked up in the city of Yakima, and nobody had started a RAP group. And so I got the ball rolling with that. I learned how to get facilitated and started the first rap group in my city. And we recently had graduated our first cohort. It took about 9 months, as long as it takes to have a baby, which I think is amazing with our PAC clients that they stayed through it the whole time. We had about 4 graduates, so I was super proud of them. Also, I have a certification in crisis awareness training. And yeah, I am very excited to be on this panel, and I'm excited to hear from all of you.
Great. All right, Pam.
Hi, I'm Pam Jacobson. I am a peer support with a Caring Alternative Act West team in Morganton, North Carolina. I've been with the ACT team for 3 years, a peer support for 4. In my past professional life, I was in retail management for about 20 years. And I am big on servant leadership, which I feel really helps me in my role as a peer support. My focus is in recovery from mental health or mental illness, rather, and domestic violence. Uh, I am big on RAP as well. I'm a RAP 2 facilitator. I am also big on psychiatric advanced directives, thanks to Jacob, and illness management recovery. I love worksheets. I'm the worksheet queen. They hate to see me come in with my worksheets. And you are going to hear my dogs. I apologize for that.
All right, great. We have a great group. Um, let me see. Can you please define this group we talked about? All right. Okay, good. You're going to explain that? Okay, you got it. All right. Sorry, I got distracted by the Q&A box, which now I think I'm showing. Let me get that out. Okay. So we have a set of questions, and I could not get animations to work with me. So you're just going to see the whole list we're going to go through. So don't get distracted by all of them. So we asked for people to send in questions to kind of get this rolling, and we got a lot of great ones. So I'm just going to be punting these out. Do clients have to agree to peer support? How do you get them to agree to it?
So I
Let's go
can start
first.
us off. I I am a big believer in the idea that peer support services are voluntary. Um, so I do want the people that I'm supporting to agree to work with me, but I also know, Lorna, your browser just came up. Uh, I also believe that as a client on an ACT team that you probably agreed yourself to be on, that uh, I'm gonna keep showing up. So I think there's a difference between being present for someone and providing services to someone. I think that going to check in with somebody once a week for, a couple minutes just to make sure that everything's okay is different to me than actually providing peer services. And so I have no problem going to check in with people a million times before we build enough rapport to actually sit down and start talking about deeper, meatier topics. So, I think there's an element, and I don't love this mindset, but there is an element that you agree to be on an ACT team, and it's a team, and the team includes a bunch of different people, and by agreeing to one, you have sort of agreed to all. But I much prefer to take the approach that, the person is really interested in seeing me, that they call the office and say, "Hey, when is Jacob coming today? When is Jacob 1 coming today?" It'd be a long time before Jacob 2 can get there from Idaho. Uh, so those are my thoughts.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
I think a big key to it is you just keep showing up. You just keep on going, you keep showing up. Sometimes showing up with a cheeseburger and a Diet Coke doesn't really hurt. Or, a coffee and a donut and saying, let's go for a walk. And I've been known to sit in a room and talk to myself if they don't want to talk, or sit in silence, watch a TV show, watch a movie, and say, all right, thanks for the visit. But if you keep showing up, eventually somebody's going to say something.
Yeah, I definitely think that that consistency is very important, building that connection with them, really emphasizing that we are not a clinical role, and just overall building that human connection with them, like Jacob and Pam said, just showing up. And a lot of us that maybe do like medication deliveries and have the payee funds, I think those are wonderful segues into the appointment, even if they maybe initially say that they do not want to engage in peer services, which is completely voluntary, but I'm still going to show up from time to definitely be checking in on them and seeing how they're doing. Those are the ones that I feel like need it the most, the ones that maybe aren't currently wanting to, or the ones that don't have that change talk going on. And so, however long it takes, I'm in here for the long haul with my peers. So,
Great answers. And Isla, I'll be the bouquet person of kind of pulling it all back in. We often say that people may have agreed to enroll in ACT, they didn't agree to everything that ACT has to offer. So if somebody did not say they want a job, we're not trying to force them into employment services, same with peer services, but that doesn't mean they don't meet with the employment specialist ever. So I think to Jacob's point is like, he could show up, he's just not going to offer peer services per se. But I like that the focus is on, we're going to engage just like we engage on anything else. And part of the engagement may be showing up with the burger and the drink. That's the engagement, or hanging out and just trying to talk about whatever TV show is on. So I think that's the spirit of it. There's my other half. We're rolling. So I like all those responses. So I think the key is you're not imposing them on peer services, but doesn't mean they don't meet the peer still. You're trying to engage just like everybody else is engaging.
I
All
think.
right, question number 2. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I really like the way this question is worded. How do you get them to agree to it? I can't get my kids to clean their room. I can't get people to do anything. That's not really my role, is to get them to do it. And I think it's really your approach. If I show up the first time I meet somebody and say, "Hey, do you want a peer support? Here's a form, sign this," or that's not going to be relationship building. That's not going to be supportive. It's really going to feel forced. And so I think the first several times is really, somebody put it in the comments, it's voluntary and it's through building rapport. And I think if you focus on that in the beginning, before you're like, "Hey, I'm a peer support, you want to do formal peer support services," if you work on getting to know that person, we can't support somebody if we don't know them. And so if you spend the
Right.
first group of your time getting to know that individual, chances are they're going to want a peer support.
Definitely. All right, next question. Do clients have to want to work on wellness to meet with peer support?
I really love this question because I had it come up recently with actually one of my peers. He has consistently relapsed, and he had shared with our behavioral health therapist on the team that he thought that maybe he should not engage in services anymore with me. I've been with him for about 2 years now, and he said, because I don't have these goals I want to work on. I am more than likely going to keep on using, and I don't want to, he told her, I don't want to be offensive to her in any way, or I don't want to let her down. And so I thought this was a wonderful opportunity for my next peer visit to just really instill in him that I'm going to meet you where you're at. By no means are you letting me down. If there's anybody else, anybody that would understand better from where you're coming from, it would be me because I have that lived experience, but I'm here with you to walk that path until you're ready to make that initial decision. And so even going out and just going on a drive or going and getting coffee and, maybe reducing that isolation. In a way, I feel like maybe those little wellness needs are met in there unknowingly to him. But no, people, I always tell them, I'm going to meet you where you're at. You absolutely don't need to be working on these wellness goals.
It's like hiding the vegetables in the spaghetti for your kids. You know, like today I went and on a drive with a client and we talked about he lives in a facility and we talked about relationship building and how to engage and live with others in a healthy way. But to him, we're going for a drive on the back roads, listening to some blues music and having a good time. But, we're hiding vegetables and spaghetti.
I like that way of framing it. So, Jacob, Jacob S.
Yeah, I mean, to get sort of go along with that, I think if the only goals that I'm working with someone on is to develop a rap, I think I'm doing something wrong. Like there's a lot more to my role than just doing rap or just writing an advanced directive. Obviously for folks that are familiar with the fidelity ratings, that is something we get reviewed on, but it's only a portion of what we're doing. I feel I kind of feel like having somebody's goal as like I want to work on a rap plan. That to me feels in line with the goals that we tell people not to write. I don't want to go to the hospital anymore. I want to take my meds the way I'm supposed to. Like these really sort of uh, boilerplate goals that people just kind of stick in because they feel like they're supposed to be there. Um, and there's so much more to it than that. And I think Jacob too had something too.
I love the answers. My kids pick out the vegetables in the spaghetti. I'm not very good. My wife tried to trick myself and my kiddo with spaghetti squash instead of spaghetti noodles, and it didn't go well. So it's a little harder sometimes. I think where the confusion on this comes from is I'm first of all, I'm really big on fidelity, and so there's fidelity components around wellness in peer support, right? And so we often look at that and say, man, how am I, if I'm just meeting this person where they're at and they're not ready to talk about wellness, I'm not meeting fidelity. And that's not actually the case, right? And there's some nuances around that. So if that's really where this question stems from is how can we meet that metric? Because really wellness, it can start at the beginning, but really formal and kind of manualized wellness doesn't happen until action or maintenance stage of change. And so if and a lot of our folks are really raw in the beginning, right? And so we're not going to hop in and say, let's make a rep plan or what are you looking like when you're well today? Those aren't always the best times to do those things, but there are some less formal tools that you can use to start bringing up some of those wellness ideas. And, um, you know, I'm not going to throw her under the bus, but Ashley has a really great uh, example of how she does this, if she wouldn't mind sharing.
Are you talking about the license?
Yes.
Yeah, so one of our Zoom calls for Washington. So over here in Washington, where we got the P in front of our act. So I'm on a pact team. So on our pact call, I had overheard some other gentleman mention that he acquired a group fishing permit. And I immediately took notes down. I was like, you got to tell me how to get this. This would be wonderful to facilitate for my wellness management recovery group. And so I ended up looking that up for Washington State. the, Parks and Recreation, and found out that you can get a group fishing permit from, if you are in a behavioral health company or any kind of like caretaker, and they will give you a fishing license that covers multiple people that you are facilitating group with. And so I ended up doing that. And instead of just taking them out on this outing, I really wanted them to understand, why are we doing this, and kind of connecting the dots together. So I created a worksheet where it was a mood check. I asked them, okay, we're going to scale on 1 to 10. How are you feeling today? What hopes are you looking for, to get out of this outing? What are you expecting today? And then after the outing, I'm almost like 10 times out of 10, there is always an increase in their mood. And we discuss that. We're like, can you see how these social outings can increase your mood and be like the highlight to your week, and how important that is for your overall mental health? And so now kind of opened a door, because now they're like, Ashley, can we go bowling? Can we go to the park? Can we do this? I'm like, okay, let me make a list. Yes, we can do that. So it's been a really wonderful tool for my groups, and even just initial one-on-ones with my peers, just making sure, I have enough time blocked out. So
I love this. There was a comment about going to the Clay County Fair is their example in a different state. So yeah, whatever your kind of local culture is too, and sort of what fits with where you are. Folks that may not have access to fishing, that might not be where they go, but thinking of where else do people say that this is, what brings them joy. These are the things they want to be doing. I love that, Ashley. And that was not throwing her under the bus, by the way, Jacob.
You put her on the
I think
spotlight.
she's driving the bus, actually, Ashley.
Right away, I was like, I need to see if this happens in North Carolina with this whole like group license. Looking into that. Next up, so I loved all these responses, and I love the idea that you're thinking in a stage-wise approach, that we're doing things in a stage-wise approach too as peers, and we're hiding stuff in. Mine was the sweet potato goes into the chili. That was my always sneak to get a little extra vitamins, is you get sweet potato in the chili, mashed up to thicken it too. So next question. And we got a couple in the Q&A I'm holding on to too. So there's more than this list. What are some peer support ways or responses to respond to clients talking about their hallucinations or delusions?
So I love this question. And first of all, the trick with the vegetables is to run the sauce through the blender, because they won't be able to taste them if they can't see them. So you got to run it through the blender, and then yeah. No, I like this question a lot. I did during the pandemic. I had some extra time to do some training, and I did group facilitation training for the Hearing Voices Network, which for folks that are not familiar is a completely peer-driven organization model where people are able to come together that have experiences that don't line up with other people around them, and they're able to talk about those in a totally non-judgmental and non-clinical environment, so they can interpret those experiences however they want and in whatever way is meaningful for them. And we were able to start something similar with some of the folks that I worked with in Raleigh. And it's a really cool and interesting process when you let people sort of define these things for themselves. Because sometimes what you'll find is that there are people that very much identify with the Western medical model that we employ as providers, that psychiatrists operate from. I'm somebody who, I take my meds, I go to the doctor every 6 weeks. Like, I do all the things I'm supposed to do, but I also know people who uh, have found a totally different way of moving through the world. And I think that it's really kind of incredible when you get to be a part of that process of somebody figuring out like, okay, this is my experience, and Jacob doesn't have that experience, but it seems pretty darn real. Uh, what do I make of that? Like, what do I do with that? And for some people, it's trying to make it go away, and for other people, it's just trying to give it some sort of meaning, some sort of explanation. I have a friend who sees animals periodically that other people don't see, and has just sort of made peace with it because what the doctors were doing wasn't really helping, and so they've just found a way to be comfortable that, sometimes we have to wake up the husband and say, is that a raccoon? Uh, I think it's really a wonderful opportunity for a peer to build allyship with the people that we're supporting. When we don't come in and argue with people about what they're experiencing or what they're thinking, uh, and instead we say, okay, that's your experience. What do we need to do so that you can be comfortable? What do we need to do so that you can live the kind of life that you want to live? I had a client who, I'll say this and then I'll be quiet. I had a client who believed that his blood could cure cancer. And so he really wanted to go to the cancer hospital. And I know as a oncology patient, the cancer hospital is really not going to appreciate his presence, regardless of how well-meaning it might be. Uh, so we set him up to be a blood donor, and he goes to the Red Cross every however many weeks, and is pretty religious about going when he's supposed to go. And for him, this was a way that he could make use of his beliefs in a way that didn't put him at odds with the world around him. And so finding things like that can be really valuable as well. So thanks.
No, go ahead, Pam. You're good.
I was just going to say, to tack on to what Jacob said, it's also about knowing your people, your clients in their particular circumstances too, because I can think of different people I work with. One person I work with, everything he experiences is true to him, and you never invalidate anybody, period. But there would be no discussion with him. It's true, it's real. The men are coming through the walls with guns to kill him. The birds are spies. And tell me more about that. How does that make you feel? Just curiously examining those things with him, redirection, that type of thing. Another person I work with, he sees angels in the sky and it makes him feel comforted and good. So we talk about that and how he feels it's a gift to him. As somebody else, they know that it's not real and want to work on ways to affirm to himself that it's not real. So we explore coping skills, and he uses his phone to see if something's really there or to record the noise he's listening to and plays it back. Or we started working with his dog to teach his dog to greet if somebody's actually there. So it depends on the person, their circumstance, and their abilities, um, and what their goal is. But I never invalidate somebody. That's not our job or our position to do. I'm not a clinician to challenge those things with them.
I think
Great
Yeah,
these are
I think Pam and Jacob did a really wonderful job. Just to kind of, I guess, highlight over what they had said already was, my biggest thing is really providing, that validation and making a safe place for them, a non-judgmental zone. And I really like to ask them, like what they're experiencing, like reflect their feelings, saying, that sounds really overwhelming. What's that like for you? Also, like Pam said, maybe helping them explore different coping strategies or give them a list and maybe say, hey, this is what's helped me before when I've gone through some mental health challenges. Have you ever thought about exploring these different areas? Or even asking them what has helped them in the past. How have you managed this in the past? Or what are some things maybe would like to try differently in the future? What are you open to? And just being there with them along that journey, because I know from what I've experienced with a lot of my peers, it can be very it's very hard. It can be very detrimental to them. And so I want to provide as much comfort as I can, like Pam said, not clinically assessing them, just being there for that to provide that validation, be a listening ear to them, and maintaining the client's or the peers' respect of their experience of what they're going through.
Yeah, I love all this. And what I'm going to probably kind of emphasize too is, with the exception of where you were saying, like, at times I may be able to reflect on my own experience and share a little bit about that and connect on that. But everything else you all shared, I kind of always think the whole team could benefit from doing it this way. This is not a unique peer move. It's a really good clinical move where you're not there to judge what it is they're experiencing. You're there to understand it and understand how it impacts them in terms of their mood and their emotions and their day-to-day kind of just going through the world. And a lot of times, for those of you trained in anything with CBT for psychosis, part of this is really trying to understand the meaning behind the delusions and the hallucinations too. So I'm going to move us along because you guys are all giving such rich information. I'm worried that they're going to be looking at this same. I want to hear about the last three questions. I'm like, too bad. Okay. Are peer supports ever the primary staff on an ITT, individual treatment team? So I think that we talked about Maria and I weighing in on this first. So an individual treatment team ideally is like that mini team that's personally carved out for that given individual. Everybody knows everybody on ACT, but only certain people on the team work with that person more closely because it makes sense given their needs, goals, and preferences. And when the peer is part of the ITT, the question is, are they ever considered the primary care coordinator within the ITT? They're the ones who keeps track of mom's number. They've talked to mom several times. Mom knows to call them. They are keeping up with a lot of basic contact information, demographic information. They know dates better than anybody else. Like, when is the PCP or plan coming up to be renewed? They may take a lead with organizing that. So our take is that there's no real reason why the peer as part of an ITT couldn't be that care coordinator. The one thing that may come up is if your state expects that somebody of a certain qualification is the one who signs off as the official signer of the plan, then give it to whoever else on the ITT can do that. But the peer can still do all those other things. So that's kind of I think, Maria, if you had anything to add on that.
Well, the only thing I would say is it's kind of similar, though, I would say, to like the team doing kind of comprehensive integrated assessment, where each team member kind of takes the lead in understanding from different points of their expertise, like the peer specialist kind of looking at strengths and wellness and those kinds of things. So even in states where it requires that somebody with a license signs off on the assessment, we still have peers contributing to that assessment by engaging and understanding what's going on in a person's life based on kind of, the role of the peer and understanding strengths and wellness. So I think it's still it's still a really important role within an ITT, and it just is a matter of like making sure that, you know, whoever signs off on it is the person that is designated to do that in your state.
All right, next one. How can a peer support without the lived experience with substance use support someone with active substance use? Who's taking that one first?
I think Pam is.
Pam, you're muted.
Oh, Pam, you're muted.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So I have no substance use background at all, but I work with many, many people that are in active substance use and have had loved ones in the past that have had active substance use. So the way that I approach it is recovery, and I strengthen myself by learning as much as I can about substance use, recovery, stages of change, all of those things, so that I can help others. Also, I educate myself on I draw comparisons. So the example I gave earlier when we were discussing this question was I have like complex PTSD, and I've been going through a very stressful period recently. Yesterday, I noticed when I was driving from Maryland to North Carolina, I was at a rest stop, and my hypervigilance is off the charts. My paranoia is very, very high. Like I haven't been this way in a long, long time. And so I got back in the car and I'm talking to my husband and I said, you know, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm experiencing. This man, and he has a black baseball cap and a green shirt and khaki shorts, and he's walked past me 3 times from behind. And, you know, my brain is telling me this is why and this is what he's up to. And, you know, but I know logically that's not true. So I bring my DBT experience into it, and I'm using my wise mind to, you know, this is my rational thought, this is my sick thought, and I'm bringing those together to get down to the root cause of why I'm feeling that way. So I can then take those skills and transfer that when somebody maybe has had a relapse. Okay, so why were you, you know, okay, a relapse happens. That's part of recovery. All right. So what happened before that? How were you feeling? What changed? What happened? What were you thinking? What were you experiencing? How did you feel inside? What happened before that? Let's get down to the why. Let's dig down deeper. You know, let's find that root cause. Drug addiction doesn't happen by accident. You know, there's always a reason, whether it is mental illness or trauma or you just like it. Who knows? But there's going to be a root cause underneath. And so, using my own skills that I've learned in my recovery, those skills still transfer to substance use. And then I educate myself also about substance use. My husband also has 20 years in substance use addiction and 14 years clean. He's also a peer support specialist, as is my roommate. So it really helps in that conversation when I can come home and say, hey, you know, I experienced this. We work for the same agency too. And so, like, hey, I experienced this with a person today. And, you know, tell me more about why they might be feeling that way. And so that's really fortunate that I have that behind me too.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you for sharing all that. And yeah, you have your own in-home consultants for you, which is
I
very
do.
sweet. Any quick ads before I go ahead and move on to the next question? Because we got 3 now hanging out and the other one too, I'm seeing.
We're cruising. I just want to say one thing
Yeah.
for the peers out there. if we have lived experience, it's never going to line up exactly with somebody else's. It's not going to
Mhm.
be exactly the same. I've never walked in those shoes. I've never been involuntarily hospitalized, but I have been incarcerated, and I know what it feels like to have my freedom taken away. Right.
Mhm.
And so it's not necessarily the exact experiences. It's a lot of the times the emotions and the things that come with it that drive that meaningful connection that peers are able to make. And so we can connect with a piece of us that understands the feelings that they may be experiencing, and that's what's going to drive that connection. That, in my opinion, even if you don't have substance use, you've likely experienced something as a peer, um, that you can connect with that person.
Excellent point to stress, Jacob. So, what are the most important things ACT team leaders can do to promote and protect the provision of faithful peer services, actual peer services? What can they do? You have a lot of team leaders and managers on here too.
Education, understanding, and support. Educate themselves in what a peer support's role is, what a peer support even is. Understand that they are not a clinician. They don't act as a clinician. Their notes don't look like a clinician's notes will look. They don't use the same clinician language that a clinician will use. They need to support them in their recovery because, for example, there's clients that I find challenging. And okay, so we have 108 clients on our team. Out of those 108, there are two that I can't see from my recovery purposes. With my domestic violence background, they're men that trigger me deeply. It's not a them thing. It's a complete me thing. I am 100% aware of that. But for me and my mental health and my peace of mind, I just don't mesh with that. And that's okay. 2 out of 108 is okay with me. Now, if it was like 40 out of 108, I shouldn't be on an ACT team. Or if you even 20, but 2, I'll take that. Um, Fortunately, I do have a lot of understanding in that area. So, understanding, support, and education, I think, are some very, very key things there.
I really appreciate that. I think I've been extremely fortunate as a peer. Um, the peers that came before me kind of laid the groundwork at the health and welfare where I was working on a PAC team, understanding what the role is and what the role isn't. Um, and my supervisor's on this call today, so shout out to Monica. She's amazing. But she really created an environment and took an interest in understanding that supervision for me might look a little bit different than a clinician. There might be things where I walk into a house and there's substances that might be a little triggering, that I might need a little bit of time to process, right? That I may not understand all the clinical language that's going on, and to take the time to educate me and to help me understand those things, um, I think was really, really important. But I think to Pam's point, I think we really have to have an understanding of what the peer role is and how it can benefit our folks and the team itself. If peer work is supported and maintained really well on a team, it can do wonders for your team. Um, so I think the most important thing that they can do to protect and the provision of faithful peer services is educate themselves on what peer services are. And then as those things come up, be vigilant and support your peers, especially in supervision. And I know we've got a really good question about supervision in the Q&A, so I'll save some of those thoughts for that. But um, dig deep and understand what the peer role is.
And I'll just quickly piggyback off of Pam and Jacob, how important role clarity is. One of the biggest things for me, I would say that I have a wonderful team leader. I'm very grateful for her. She's very supportive. One of the biggest things was her encouraging me to cross train our team. Um, and I've shared this before, but there has been a few different people that have been with our company for over 20 years. And after my cross training, I had her come up and say, you know what, I actually never really knew what peer support specialists actually do. And by you talking about it and sharing your lived experience, I mean, there's staffing. But when I had that time to in our staffing meeting to go over that, it really clarified my role on the team. And another one came up and she said, I just want to let you know this helped me so much. It actually made me not want to be as cynical towards our peers, towards the ones that consistent relapse, because it is frustrating. But one of the biggest things was her encouraging me to share my testimony with my team members. As nerve-wracking as that was, I decided to put it out there and let them know, kind of have a just what it's actually like for someone, you know, that has gone through mental health challenges and substance use disorder. And I feel like there's been such a tight knit after that. Really has bonded our team. I really want to encourage everyone on here. If you have a peer or supervisors or team leaders on here, to encourage your peers to take time, set time aside to have them share part of their testimony. One of our peers that actually she retired, she worked on our team for 8 years. The team had no idea what she had been through. And since I had shared, I was like, did you ever share with them exactly what, you know, what you're comfortable with? And she did, and all of them just came and gave her a hug. They were like, we had no idea. And so I think that really also creates a strong team bonding experience and overall all just benefits your team. So just wanted to
Love
share
that
that
you
real
said
quick.
that. You
And
get extra points for because that is part of fidelity, right?
Yeah,
Is
Yeah.
I was
that
gonna
cross
say, yeah.
training piece. Were you going to say that, Lorna?
And I
No,
think valuing and respecting them as an equal voice to everybody
yeah,
Yes,
else, because I think that doesn't happen enough.
it doesn't happen
absolutely.
enough, and it's
We're not a
definitely where the
spare
team
part.
leader, yeah, this is where the team leader should be coming in to help support the peer being fully seen and their voice being heard in that daily team meeting when things are being looked at. Don't directly look at the psychiatrist for an answer. Go look at the peer and say, what are your thoughts? Like, really boost them. But I, like Maria was just saying, I was like, Ashley's like just priming up fidelity because I'm like, y'all know these are questions we're asking everybody. We're asking them, how are you being influenced by the peer? What do you know the
Absolutely.
recovery story?
Hmm.
So
And I will say, you mentioned earlier, Lorna, that some of the strategies that everyone was talking about around engagement and, answering some of these earlier questions, and that, other team members should also be doing those things. Well, often the peer is really the one who's leading the charge in that area. And so then the peer can be the one to cross train around these other areas that are not just unique to the peer, but are strategies you use that could help the rest of the team around engagement. And I know we've talked about engagement in a past call too, so I think there's a lot of overlap there.
yes, definitely. All right, this next one comes up fairly often in our world with questions. What is the peer's involvement in the process of involuntary committing somebody? What are they involved? What level of involvement? Are they kept out of it? Who wants to take that one?
I think Jacob S. He had some good insights.
I was going to say Jacob S. I know has opinions on this one,
I
so
do have
let's hear.
opinions on this one. I have all sorts of opinions on this one. So I think as a general rule, uh, peer specialists should not be doing involuntary hospitalization. Um, I can't tell you exactly what that means for you because I know that it's different in different states. Like the process is very different from state to state. But in North Carolina, the way that it works is somebody goes to the magistrate, they swear out a petition, so they state under oath firsthand knowledge about why the person is a danger to themselves or others, and the magistrate decides whether or not to issue a pickup order. And that particular process is not really something that peers should be engaging in. It creates a huge power differential that we're really trying hard to avoid. Um, there are safety issues, and you do what you have to do, and I'm very aware of that. I know we don't live in a world that's ever going to be commitment free. Um, I think it's also really important to be transparent about what's happening and why it's happening. So, if I was in a situation where I was really concerned about somebody's safety, but it wasn't like they were going to shoot someone if I walked out the door, then I would have a conversation with them about why I was very concerned for them and who I was calling when I called another more clinical member of the team and why I was calling them. I've always made it a point either before or shortly after to let people know when I have been involved in them ending up in the hospital, when I have ended up with them being involved with protective services like child protective services. Um, I think it's really important as part of that mutual relationship that I maintain that transparency. And I think that by doing that and by avoiding direct involvement in getting someone essentially locked up. Like North Carolina, if you get taken to the hospital, you're going in handcuffs. Whether you agree to go or not, you're going in cuffs. That's just standard policy. So it's a really traumatizing experience, and by not participating in that, I allow myself to come in as an ally to that person, not to argue about whether or not they're supposed to be there, but to figure out how to, for lack of a better phrase, make the best of the situation. So you're here. There's nothing we can do about that. That ship has sailed. So what can we do so that this maybe is actually helpful? How can we help you not be so uncomfortable? Who do you want to talk to? Who do you not want to talk to? What are the things that are and are not helpful? It's a lot of the same stuff that comes up in an advanced directive, a psychiatric advanced directive, or in a RAP crisis plan. Uh, Without the paperwork. It's a lot of the same questions. What can we do so that this is a less traumatizing experience for you? Um, and I'll just use this as the opportunity to put in my plug for doing those advanced planning processes with people because in North Carolina, we had a law passed that's going to result in potentially a lot of more restrictive interventions in mental health treatment. There are other states that's happened in as well, and we have an executive order calling for essentially reinstitutionalizing a large number of people. Thankfully, that's not how it's playing out right now, but there's very much an atmosphere of we know best. You need to do what you're told, or we're just going to put you over here, out of sight, out of mind. And so I think helping people to uh, exercise their mind, their feelings, their recovery in a way where they can be best situated for when a situation like that comes up is a really important part of our job. It's especially important for peer specialists. It should be important for all of us. Um, I think that yeah, so that's my plug there. I spent a lot of time in grad school writing about this stuff, so I'm a little hot to trot about it. Um, but I
If
do.
I,
These are ways that we can support people in remaining in control even when they're not in control. This is how we help
Yeah.
people maintain influence when they're in their most vulnerable situations.
And if I could just do a summary and follow-up question and then see if anybody else has some additions to this is you're saying because when we're petitioning, there often still is a lot of gray about what's going on. We can't predict actual risk very well in these moments. So you think the risk is potentially there, that's potentially imminent, but you're not totally sure. And what you're saying is, I may be the witness to it, but I don't have to be the only witness to it. So I'm going to get other team members involved to witness this, and I get to tap out at this point to try not to be kind of like culprits in the process. But if you were witnessing a true emergency where the harm was in the moment, you're not saying I'm tapping out of that. You're a compassionate person that's going to respond by calling the police or whoever it needs, the crisis team coming in. So you're saying it's in the moments of the gray where we have time to talk this through, see if we're going to petition. You're tapping somebody else on the team, and this does not need to be you. Got it.
That's exactly right. And, yeah, if it's a true emergency, if somebody, the time that my coworker found an automatic weapon in somebody's apartment, like, you do what you have to do. Like,
Right.
you are a regular person in addition to being a peer
Yeah.
specialist. But yeah, it is those gray areas where it's helpful to bring in a third party.
I just want to add because I think Jacob, he's the plug for psychiatric advance directives is
Mhm.
incredible. A way to have people keep their voice even when they're not at their best is incredible. And
Mhm.
so if that's not part of something that your team does, it's a really great way to do it. Really important that they're done when somebody is doing well.
Mhm.
That is really important. The one thing about what's my involvement in the involuntary commitment process, I second everything he said. One thing that I do when I set it up is I'm not a friend. I don't write, friends don't write Medicaid notes on their friends, right? We don't document. So I do have a role. And so as I'm getting to know this person, and it may not come up the first session or the second time that I meet with them, but I'm going to let them know there are certain things that I do have to report back. Um, and I'll kind of let them know, and then I'll try and come to an agreement with them on what steps would you like me to take, and let them know this when I do have to take steps. Um, I really want to try to avoid the power differential as much as possible, but when safety's at a concern. And so I think that if you have those conversations about your role as a peer in the beginning, you're more set up for that transparency and that understanding and salvaging that relationship. But another plug is hopefully nobody on the PAC team is in charge of involuntary commitments, if that all possible. I know that some states they can't be, but um, we damage relationships, right? And PACT is all about the relationship we have with somebody. So if there's another outside agency that can come in to do it, I think that's the best option.
If you come up with a safety agreement out of the gate, as a peer
Agreed.
support with somebody, if you're saying these things, this is what we agree I'm going to do, and then you can reflect back on that after if that situation comes up can be helpful as well.
One thing that to piggyback on this, and then I'm going to turn us to a few of the Q&A questions because I know we want to end on the high note question here. When we have to use anything that feels coercive in the concern out of safety for the ACT team, research shows that the more you use what they call, it's a fancy phrase, procedural justice, the more likely the person comes out of the experience not feeling coerced. And what that means, so it's important for all of us. And it's coming from a place where throughout the whole thing, you're saying, I hated that we had to take these steps. We were really scared for you. We care about your safety. We don't want this to happen again. How do we work with you so this never happens again? The more you weave that in throughout, the more likely the person comes out of that experience feeling appreciative and not spiteful. So just a little added note for the whole team. Are we good with me going to the Q&A box for a couple of these? We may not get to everything because you all are doing great, asking wonderful questions that gets a lot of responses. All right. One question. This one kind of goes back to the earlier one. We have some strong feelings about peers being supervised by non-peers in community services. Can you speak a little about what this is like? Have there been any tensions? What has worked well in supervision? Anything you've done to help your supervisor, presumably the team leader, understand and protect your role?
This is a fantastic question for, I think, a number of different reasons. But one, getting real. There's tension sometimes on teams where, especially if the peer role isn't understood or there's questions about, I think the support and employment specialists sometimes come across this too, where their role can be misunderstood. And so uh, I think with the supervision, um, each state's certifying body for peer support is going to have supervision requirements. I know at some point in the future for Washington, new peers will have to be supervised by peer supervisors, and then it can transition to another person. There's value in both. I think as a new peer coming on, even though I was really fortunate, I didn't know how to integrate but not assimilate. And that's Pat Deegan phrase. If you're familiar with Pat Deegan, I didn't know how to not use clinical terms. That's what I started hearing all around me. And then I started using those, right? I didn't know how to stay in my role. So if I would have had a peer supervisor or a peer mentor, that would have been really helpful for me. However, there's a lot of things that my supervisor, because she understood the peer role, she really supported me in that. So I think one, it's up to the supervisory body. There's nothing saying that you can't be supervised by your team lead and a peer. But I think what's really going to be beneficial is if the peer understands what it looks like to supervise a peer and how that's different than clinical supervision, because there are some things that come up. I know I shouted out my previous supervisor, but she would really help me understand some ethical things that peers come up with, dual roles, seeing people in recovery meetings, social media, where maybe those things don't happen as much for our MHPs or our nurses, but they happen a lot more frequently with peers. And she was really good about helping me navigate those things because she took the time to understand the peer role and what it was about. And so I think if there's strong feelings, I think it's really good to make sure both people are heard and then work towards that common solution. But yeah, I think there is a solution. It's just navigating it to find out what's missing from the supervision that they feel the need to go get it from a peer supervisor, because there is benefit in getting it from a peer supervisor.
Great response. We actually had for a while a peer trainer was developing curriculum around how to train clinical leaders on how to support and supervise peers. And I like you bringing up that the employment specialists and other staff are similar in this way. And how I think, and we really encourage agencies hire peers and promote them up to be these people who also supervise peers. So similar to nursing, ACTS team leaders in some ways supervise nursing, but it's not on nursing activities per se. It's workflow issues, it's team dynamics, it may be around engagement, ethics, things like that. So they have their limits on a lot of the roles too. I'm going to go ahead and move if I might, and then we'll be priming up Ashley and Pam. This one I think is really interesting because this comes up a lot too. As Jacob shares, he's been going and getting his license, his clinical bachelor's, then his MSW. How might you advise a peer specialist who is at risk of no longer seeing themselves as a peer specialist? Ashley, Pam, you got thoughts on that one? Jacob may have thoughts because he's been there too.
At risk of not seeing themselves as a peer specialist.
Yeah, they've been assimilated now. Like I think Jacob was saying, they've learned the clinical talk. They want to be a clinician. They may be getting their
I hold on
education.
to my peer role by my fingernails, kicking and screaming. This is a fight I fight every day because I am surrounded by clinicians on an island by myself. And many times I refuse to put my notes into clinical terms, clinician terms. And that's a fight that I fight all the time because I am not a clinician. Uh, so it's a battle. Because it's easy to go with the flow and it's easy to fall into that pattern. Uh, it's easy to be used as a tool to go and say, go teach these DBT skills. I am not to be teaching those things. I am not a therapist to be, going in there and teaching you DBT. I can help support that role, but I am not to be doing DBT with you or doing, those things. I can help support that. I can help strengthen those coping skills. I can, help you practice your box breathing and things like that. But I'm not to be the only one going in and doing those therapy essentially with you. I am not a
Mhm.
therapist. It takes me being very strong and confident in my position, in my role, and knowing what my job is and sticking to my job description, um, is a challenge. It is a challenge to stay in my lane. I won't
Mm.
lie. Uh, I do a lot of worksheets with people, but then I also have to go in and I might go in with a plan and it goes all out the window when I get there because that person might not be in that place that day. I have to meet them where they're at. Um, I am going to school though to be a social worker. So I'll be in Jacob's spot, hopefully not too long from now. So who knows? Uh,
Mhm.
and maybe then I will be that clinician. But right now I'm not on a peer support. I do
Yeah,
RAP. We work on RAP. We work on psychiatric advance directives. We work on IMR. We work on all of those things. We do work on coping skills. We do cover all of that, but I'm not their therapist. Uh,
right. I think this is key. And I think what you're hitting on too, when this question comes up, and I'll get everybody else's reaction too with this, is when I hear about what defines the peer versus what defines the clinician, I'm always struck because I'm like, the list we create for the peer, I'm like, well, we want the clinician doing all of that too. I think where it gets down to is you're not diagnosing, you are not doing clinical assessments. And when it comes to what constitutes therapy, it can get murky in terms of what we're talking about with peer roles. As a non peer, I'm not trying to fake my way through a lived experience. You come with authenticity to connect over, and I don't. And I think the other two things that I've seen different is that peers get trained in their role to be more comfortable with risk than clinicians are. Clinicians get far too risk adverse to the point that I think it creates problems. And peers sometimes may feel like they get too comfortable with risk that they need supervision around that. But I'll get reactions to that.
and I have a lot more leeway. I can go and build those relationships. I can go out and within reason talk about my life with them and build those relationships on a more casual level. Hey, I had this experience the other day with my boyfriend. We had an argument about this, and this is how we resolved that. Has that ever happened with you? And get that feedback and learn like relationship skills, teach them relationship skills and work on those things together. Whereas maybe a therapist can't have that relationship with, a peer. I have a little bit more leeway there. But I mean, I like it. I love it. I love what I do.
Think to a certain extent
You have to have boundaries.
you have to pick.
Yeah.
So, I I did just finish a master's in social work. I don't know what I'm going to do about licensure, but I have made the decision that uh, my focus is going to remain on my work as a peer and not my education as a social worker. I actually didn't pursue clinical social work as my focus. I know other people who I've worked with who I think very, very highly of who made a different decision. They went to grad school and they got licensed and they said, okay, for at this point, I'm going to shift into a more clinical role, but I'm going to keep allowing that sort of peer element of things to shade what I do as a clinician. Um, and so it takes conscious thought to be able to say like, okay, this is where I'm going to sit. What do I need to do to stay here to protect that, like Pam was talking about? What do I need to do to maintain that focus? Um, or do I want to shift into a more clinical role? Because that definitely happens, and I think peers in the end end up making great clinicians because they have a better understanding of what they are doing uh, kind of to other people for lack of a better way of putting that. They know what it's like to be in DBT. They know what it's like to be in the hospital. Like having that knowledge, whether you're ever sharing it with a client or not, is gonna have an influence on how you interact with those things as a professional. So
Excellent thoughts, all. What is the most important part of this work that keeps you coming back?
Okay, I'll start off on this one. As I love this question that Jacob had thrown here at the end. Um, I have such a passion for this job. I really love just seeing the people as people, not for their diagnosis. And seeing that nobody's too far gone, that hope is not lost. Um, there's this is probably one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had, and to being able to be there along with people during the challenges in their life and help them to be able to navigate through all those hurdles is incredibly rewarding. I always tell them all the time, I say, this is our opportunity. You can turn this mess into a message. You can turn this test into a testimony. You could turn these trials into triumph. And so just kind of being that cheerleader for them, and a lot of my peers where I see where they were at before to where they're at now is incredible. And that's what keeps me coming back. Even and it's hard being on an act or pack team because a lot of the time, we lose a lot of our peers, and it is a very challenging job, and learning to have that self-care and to take time for ourselves. But doesn't deter me at all. I love being a part of such a wonderful team, helping these people navigate through their mental health challenges and either substance use disorders, and just find that that sparkle again in their eyes, that hope again in their life. And so that's what keeps me coming back. I really, really value this job and the work that we do.
To tack on to what Ashley said about the sparkle in their eye, what I compare it to is like panning for gold. Every day I come in and I pan for gold, and what keeps me coming back is the glimmers. I call it the glimmers. Those little moments of hope, and when somebody doesn't use one day, or uh there's this one guy that I was seeing and seeing and seeing, and he remembered my name one time, and I was like, oh my gosh, and that had me riding on a high for 4 days, and it's something so little, but that took 3 months, took me a year and a half to get a guy to just go on a walk with me. And that I still think about that. That was a year ago. So those little glimmers, those moments, those little tiny moments mean everything to me. And that keeps me coming back every day. Just maybe I'll get one more. Uh, I love it. I love it.
Helping people get their competency back. Uh, having people that are able to regain control over their life as a legal adult and no longer through a guardian. Having people be able to take over managing their own finances again. Helping people who have been unhoused potentially for their entire adult life be able to uh, establish and maintain independent housing. Those are the sorts of things that really put the oomph in what I was doing. I think a lot of the support that I provided felt very sort of mundane. Like, yeah, everybody needs groceries and everybody needs to pay their bills, and you need a little extra help, so we'll help you. And it wasn't a bad thing. It was just it didn't feed my energy levels quite as much as those big landmark things where you really helped people build independence in a way that society basically told them they would never have. Because I can relate to that very deeply from my own experience of recovery, where there was no expectation that I was going to have a career, that I was going to finish school, that I was going to own a home, and I do all those things now. So helping other people do that is just incredibly valuable for me.
I've these have been great answers. Wonderful, wonderful topic. I'll try not to cry because this is so meaningful to me. Act work is hard. If you do this for long enough, you're gonna be fired. You're gonna lose folks. You're gonna see people in and out of the hospital. You're gonna cry with your team members. You're gonna support each other. You're gonna go for months without feeling like you've had a win. And then somebody's gonna say that they have been taking their meds for 30 days and they feel great. And that's the win. Or you're going to be the person that shows up with a Christmas gift when they don't have any family. And then they share the knowledge of where Silent Night came from. And they tell you that their gift is sharing knowledge. And you get to a very small human connection with somebody that may not have that in their life. And if you went into mental health services to get rich, you made some decisions on the way that probably weren't the best. We do it to help people, and most of us know the system is not the best at helping our folks. But every day that you show up and you make a difference, whether you feel it or not, whether you see it or not, they do. And now that I'm not doing direct services, I get to help the people that are in the trenches, like Pam and Ashley, and give them the tools to make a difference, even if it's just a small difference in somebody's life that day. But our folks need it. They need everything that they can get. And so I really appreciate the time that you all take. The messages in here are incredible. I'm very passionate about peer support. Take care of your peers. They're a great asset. Spend some time, ask them how they're doing. I think it's super beneficial. I really appreciate everybody being here.
We appreciate you all. And thank you, everybody in the audience, showing so much love and positive comments. I don't know if you all had the chat open to see them, but you begin a lot of support along the way. And yeah, Maria, do we have an evaluation?
Yeah, I put it in the chat. I can put it in again. I'll put
Yeah,
it in right
maybe.
now
Yeah,
before
so
we all sign off
fresh.
here. Let's see. Yeah, I'm scrolling up. 1 second.
I loved how you summed that up. Jacob number 2, Jacob H, whatever we're calling you. Spirit Jacob is what I'm going to say. Um, oh, then you're Institute Jacob. That's not a good comparison. We may not want to go that route. My
No,
Jacob.
we settled on Jacob Hackman as evil Jacob.
Evil Jacob. I'll be evil.
He is the Wario to my Mario.
But that was a
Okay.
great way. If you connect to ACT, you get this, you get everything they're saying. You know what the goal that you're looking for. I love how Pam, you framed that too. Just you all shared a lot of wise words. So thank you, Ashley and Pam, for joining us. Thank you to Jacob and Jacob for facilitating it. And we always read your evaluations. So please take time to grab it and open it while Maria has it here. Believe it or not, we actually have the next speaker in August queued up. Good on us. So Dr. David Penn will be joining and talking about social skills training using a very, as he says it, he's like, it's the most basic things that we overlook on how to work in social skills training. And I love that somebody in the chat box said, I'm not there to be their friend. I'm there to help them learn how to make their friends. And it's like,
Love
point taken there. Good setup for next time.
that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
August 3rd, that's the date, right? For our next one? Same time, same place?
Yep.
Let me
So
just double
every
check.
other month,
Yes.
first Monday.
Yeah.
All
All right.
right. Signing
Thanks,
off,
everyone.
y'all.
Have a good one. Happy summer.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. It's amazing. You guys are amazing.